My own sister stole my dreams, wore my success like a crown, and smiled while the world applauded her, until the truth tore everything apart. From the moment we were children, my sister Clara had a strange talent for turning my light into her reflection. Every time I achieved something, she was there, smiling brightly, positioning herself just right so that everyone saw her beside me, as if we'd done it together. As kids, it was harmless. When I won the school art fair, she'd laugh and say, "We did it," and I'd let her have the joy of pretending. I didn't care much back then. I thought that's what love between sisters was, sharing moments, even when they weren't equally earned. But as we grew older, the weight of her shadow became harder to ignore. Clara was charming, loud, and effortlessly magnetic. She could walk into a room and have every eye turned to her, every ear ready to listen. I was the opposite. Quiet, observant, always with a sketchbook in my hands. I didn't crave attention. I craved creation. My dream was to become a fashion designer, to tell stories through fabric and color, to make art that whispered emotion. While Clara collected followers online, I collected scraps of cloth and charcoal pencils. Every stitch I sewed, every sketch I made felt like breathing life into a version of myself that no one else saw. When the scholarship opportunity came, it felt like fate finally noticed me. A well-known fashion startup was hosting a national competition for young designers, and the winner would receive a full scholarship and the chance to showcase their collection at the company's annual event. I worked like a woman possessed. I barely slept, spending endless nights in my small apartment, sketching under the weak yellow light of my desk lamp. My fingers bled from stitching, my eyes burned from exhaustion, but I didn't care. The designs I created weren't just clothes, they were confessions. Each piece represented a part of my journey: rejection, hope, betrayal, perseverance. I felt proud for the first time in years. I believed that maybe, just maybe, this was the start of my real life. But the night before the presentation, something felt wrong. My workspace, usually chaotic but familiar, felt violated. My sketchbook, the one with all my original designs, concept notes, and fabric patterns, was gone. Panic flooded me so fast I could barely breathe. I searched every corner, every drawer, every pile of fabric, calling Clara's name even though she wasn't home. My hands shook as I ripped through boxes and old notebooks. Nothing. Then my phone buzzed. It was a notification from Instagram, Clara's story. I opened it and my heart stopped. There she was, standing in front of a bright backdrop with the competition's logo behind her. She was wearing one of my designs, the red silk gown with the asymmetrical neckline, the one I'd poured my heart into. The caption read, "Can't wait to show my collection tomorrow. So proud of this journey." My vision blurred. My ears rang. I scrolled through her photos in disbelief, and there it was, my collection. My sketches, my creations, my soul. Every detail was mine, and she was proudly claiming it as her own. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my bed, shaking, staring at my phone, replaying her story over and over, hoping there was some explanation. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe she'd say she was just helping me display the work. But deep down, I knew better. Clara had always wanted the spotlight, and now she had it, built entirely by my hands. The next day, I went to the venue, pretending to be an audience member. Watching her walk on stage wearing one of my dresses nearly broke me. The judges applauded her originality. The audience admired her fresh vision. And when they announced her as the winner, I felt my chest cave in. She cried on stage, thanking everyone who supported her journey. She never said my name once. The news articles called her a prodigy, a young visionary. My world collapsed in silence. When I confronted her later, my voice trembled. "Why, Clara? You stole my designs. You stole me." She just smirked, leaning against the doorway like it was all a joke. "Relax, Lucy," she said, her tone dripping with mock sympathy. "You should be grateful. I made your designs famous. You could never have pulled it off yourself. You don't have the confidence." Her words cut through me like glass. Confidence? I didn't need confidence, I needed honesty. I needed recognition for the blood and sweat I'd poured into every detail. But she didn't understand. She never did. After that night, I shut the world out. I stopped sketching, stopped dreaming. My sketchbooks gathered dust. My sewing machine sat silent. I felt like a ghost haunting the ruins of my own ambitions. Clara thrived while I disappeared. Her face was on every magazine cover, her social media flooded with interviews and sponsorships. And I couldn't do anything. Every time I thought of exposing her, I imagined the world's laughter. No one would believe me. She was the golden sister, the beautiful one, the genius. I was just the quiet girl in the background, always too timid to fight. But grief has a strange way of sharpening the soul. One night, as I sat at my desk staring at my computer, I remembered something. I'd saved every original sketch digitally in a hidden folder on my old laptop. The files had timestamps, metadata, everything. Proof. Real, undeniable proof that every design was mine. I opened them, one by one, staring at my own initials, my digital signature at the corner of each design. The truth glowed on the screen like a lifeline. My hands stopped trembling. For the first time in months, I felt something stronger than anger. I felt purpose. I didn't know exactly how or when, but I knew this wasn't over. Clara thought she'd silenced me, but she didn't realize I was still here, waiting for the right moment. Because revenge isn't always loud or violent. Sometimes it's patient, quiet, and deliberate. I wouldn't just expose her. I'd make the truth impossible to ignore. She'd built her empire on my art, but I'd built my revenge on her arrogance. And when the time came, when the world saw the real creator behind her stolen success, I wouldn't need to shout. The truth would speak for me, and for the first time in my life, I was ready to listen. The months that followed Clara's betrayal were an endless storm disguised as calm. I watched her rise to fame like a phoenix made of stolen feathers, her smile lighting up every magazine cover, her name spoken with awe and envy. My own creations paraded across television screens and fashion runways, but under her name. Each time I saw one of my dresses in a commercial or a social post, my stomach twisted into knots. People praised her vision, her originality, her innate genius. They said she was the new face of fashion, bold, innovative, emotional. I wanted to laugh at the irony. The emotion they loved wasn't hers. It was mine, ripped from the pages of my soul. And yet, I stayed silent, because I realized something painful but true. When the world loves a lie, you can't tear it down with anger. You tear it down with proof. I moved out of the apartment we shared and cut off all contact. Clara didn't bother to call. She didn't have to. She'd already replaced me with fame. I found a small place on the edge of the city, a quiet, crumbling studio apartment above a thrift store that smelled like old leather and dust. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I spent my days trying to forget, and my nights remembering everything. Sometimes I'd catch myself sketching again, though I'd quickly shove the paper away, afraid of feeling hope. But the thing about creativity is that it's a fire that refuses to die. One night, after crying until my chest hurt, I picked up a dull pencil and started sketching. The lines trembled at first, but soon they began to flow again. Before I knew it, dawn was breaking, and I had a table full of designs. New ones, powerful ones. I realized I wasn't creating out of ambition anymore. I was creating out of survival. To pay rent, I found work at a small boutique owned by an older woman named Marianne. She was sharp-eyed, kind, and carried a mysterious grace that came from years of loving and losing. "You've got a designer's hands," she told me one day, watching as I altered a client's torn dress. "And an artist's heart. That combination can be dangerous." I smiled for the first time in weeks. Marianne didn't know my story, but she saw through my silence. She let me work in the back room where I repaired vintage clothes and slowly began sketching again. She encouraged me, often leaving scraps of silk or lace on my table with a note that said, "For your next masterpiece." As weeks turned into months, I started to heal in quiet ways. I built new designs, kept digital logs, and backed up everything twice. Every piece I made felt like a rebellion, like taking back a little piece of myself from the ashes Clara had left. I didn't want revenge anymore, not in the cruel sense. What I wanted was restoration. I wanted my name to mean something again. Then, one evening, while closing the shop, Marianne introduced me to someone who would unknowingly ignite the spark I'd been waiting for. "Lucy," she said, smiling. "This is Angela from Urban Vogue. She's doing a feature on underground designers who deserve recognition." My heart stopped. Urban Vogue, the same magazine that had put Clara on their cover months ago. Angela reached out to shake my hand, her eyes curious. "Marianne tells me you've got something special." I hesitated, a war raging in my chest. Part of me wanted to stay hidden. The other part, the stronger one, knew this was fate knocking. We sat in the back room while rain whispered against the windows. I showed her my portfolio. First the new designs, then, with trembling hands, the old ones. The stolen ones. I explained nothing at first. I just let her flip through the pages, her brows furrowed as she studied the sketches, the timestamps, the digital notes. Finally, she looked up. "These designs, they look like early works from Clara Valen's collection." I took a deep breath and met her gaze. "They don't look like them," I said quietly. "They are them. I designed every single one." Angela's eyes widened. She didn't speak for a moment, as if trying to piece together the enormity of what I'd just confessed. Then she said softly, "Do you have proof?" I nodded and handed her a flash drive. Inside were original digital files, complete with timestamps, signatures, and drafts, evidence Clara could never erase. Angela scrolled through them, her expression changing from skepticism to awe. "Lucy, this is undeniable." Her voice was hushed, almost reverent. "If what you're saying is true, this could be a major story." I didn't smile. "I'm not looking for headlines," I said. "I just want the truth to breathe." Within a week, she began an investigation quietly, speaking to industry insiders, verifying digital archives, and cross-referencing timelines. Each step uncovered more proof of my authorship, patterns too distinct to be a coincidence. She called me late one night. "Lucy, it's all real. You were the original designer. I have enough to expose her." I didn't know whether to cry or laugh. For so long I had dreamed of justice, and now it was finally here. Yet it felt strangely bittersweet. I walked to the window of my tiny apartment, staring at the city lights below. Clara was probably still out there, living her perfect, fabricated life. But perfection built on lies always cracks. I realized I didn't need to destroy her. She'd already planted the seeds of her own downfall. All I had to do was let the truth bloom. Angela promised the feature would be titled, "The Real Designer Behind the Star." She said it would go live in 2 weeks. As I hung up, my heart pounded, not from fear, but from something fiercer. Clara would see it. The whole world would see it. And for once, my silence would no longer be my prison. It would be my power. That night, I worked late into the morning, designing again with tears streaming down my cheeks. Every stitch, every curve, every fold of fabric was an echo of everything I had endured. I wasn't doing it for revenge anymore. I was doing it because I finally remembered who I was. When I finished, I looked at the final sketch on my table. A dress woven from shattered glass motifs and soft silk. A metaphor for my story. "Beauty reborn from brokenness," I whispered to the drawing. "This time, it's mine." And as dawn spilled across the city, I knew the quiet war I'd been fighting was almost over. Clara's fame had been built on my silence, but now my silence was about to break, and when it did, it would roar. The article hit like lightning, splitting the sky in half. "Rising Star's Success Built on Stolen Designs. The Truth Behind the Valen Sisters." Those words flashed across every major news outlet, shared millions of times within hours. My phone buzzed relentlessly as messages poured in. Some from old friends who'd always doubted Clara. Some from strangers thanking me for speaking up. I didn't reply to any of them. I just sat there in silence, staring at the headline that finally gave my pain a voice. Clara's empire began to crumble overnight. Her sponsors dropped her without hesitation. Her social media followers turned into critics, and the same journalists who once praised her now demanded answers. She tried to post a video defending herself, saying it was all a misunderstanding, that I had helped her with some concepts. But people weren't stupid anymore. The evidence Angela published was undeniable. Timestamps, drafts, emails. Every thread led back to me. The internet had chosen its verdict. Clara Valen, the fraud. That evening, when the city had gone quiet, a soft knock echoed on my door. For a moment I thought it was a dream. Then I opened it and saw her standing there. Her hair was messy, her face streaked with mascara, her hands trembling. "Lucy," she whispered, her voice cracking, "please, we need to talk." I didn't move. The sight of her, the sister who had stolen everything from me, stirred a strange mix of anger and pity. She stepped closer, desperation spilling from her eyes. "You're ruining my life," she cried. I met her gaze, unflinching. "You ruined mine first," I said softly. "I just stopped pretending it didn't hurt." Her lips quivered, and for a second, I saw the girl she used to be, the sister who used to braid my hair, who used to laugh with me under the covers as we dreamed about growing up. But that girl was gone. Clara fell to her knees, grabbing my hands. "Please tell them it's not true. Tell them you forgive me. I'll fix this." Her tears dripped onto my skin, but I felt nothing. Forgiveness wasn't a language I could speak anymore. I gently pulled my hands away and said, "You can't fix what you destroyed. You can only live with it." She stared at me for a long moment, her expression hollow, before walking away into the night. I closed the door and leaned against it, feeling the full weight of years of silence finally break inside me. The next morning, Urban Vogue reached out, offering me an exclusive interview. They called me the girl who took her name back. The irony wasn't lost on me. For so long I had been invisible, and now the world wanted to hear my story. I agreed, not for fame, but for truth. During the interview, I spoke not with bitterness, but with calm honesty. I told them how art had been my refuge, how creation had been my voice long before anyone cared to listen. I didn't insult Clara or gloat over her downfall. I simply told them what it felt like to lose everything you built, and how it felt to reclaim it piece by piece. When the article came out, it wasn't just an exposé. It was a rebirth. The fashion world reached out. Small independent brands wanted to collaborate. Invitations poured in for shows, panels, and features. But the one that meant the most came from Marianne. She found me at the shop one evening, tears glistening in her eyes. "You did it, Lucy," she whispered, holding up the magazine that bore my name on the cover. Lucy Valen, the real vision behind the art. I hugged her tightly, the woman who'd sheltered me when the world had shut me out. "We did it," I said, smiling through tears. That night I worked late into the dark again, not out of desperation, but out of love. Every design I touched felt different now, freer, lighter. I was no longer sewing my pain. I was sewing my peace. Months passed, and the fashion house that had once ignored me offered me a partnership. I accepted, but on my terms. I wanted full creative control, every design signed under my name. When I walked into the studio for my first official collection, the air felt electric. Reporters waited outside, photographers buzzed, and I could almost feel the ghosts of my old fears dissolving into the light. The night of my debut show arrived faster than I expected. Backstage, models dressed in my creations, pieces inspired by survival, forgiveness, and rebirth. As the music began, I stood in the shadows, heart pounding, watching my art glide down the runway. The crowd gasped, applauded, cried. The final look, a gown of white silk embroidered with fractured gold patterns, shimmered under the lights, a symbol of brokenness turned beautiful. When the last model disappeared backstage, the crowd rose to its feet, the applause thunderous. For the first time I stepped onto the runway, not as someone's sister, not as someone's shadow, but as me. The lights were blinding, but I didn't flinch. I smiled, bowed, and whispered to myself, "You made it." After the show, as I packed up my sketches, an envelope was delivered to my dressing room. My name was written in familiar handwriting. I hesitated before opening it, my hands trembling slightly. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No apology, no excuses, just one line. I finally saw the show. "You were always the real artist." I stared at the words until they blurred. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel anger, just sadness, and a quiet kind of closure. I folded the letter gently and slipped it into the back of my sketchbook, next to my oldest designs, the ones she once stole. I wanted to keep it there, not as a reminder of her betrayal, but as proof that even lies can't bury truth forever. That night, I walked through the empty venue after everyone had left. The air smelled of perfume, silk, and success. I stood on the stage where my name had glowed in gold lights and closed my eyes. The silence felt like a song. I thought of Clara somewhere out there, perhaps watching from afar, finally facing her reflection without my shadow beside her. I didn't hate her anymore. Revenge, I realized, isn't about destroying someone. It's about reclaiming what was stolen from your soul. It's about standing tall where you were once made to kneel. As the lights dimmed and the curtain fell, I whispered the words that had carried me through every night of doubt. The truth always stitches itself back together. And it had. My story was no longer about what she took, but about what I reclaimed. My name, my art, my peace.